Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. So, you've been told that I'm the devil, have you? Well, I wonder what caught on. Do you know how long I've lived in the desert for and why I chose the desert as my place of residence? It's not because I enjoy looking at absolutely nothing. It's because I'm trying to keep my complexion. So today I'm going to share with you 5 must-haves from Harbor Freight when it comes to welding. And then I'm going to share with you 5 items that you might want to pick up that might not come from Harbor Freight because they don't have them yet, or at least not at the moment. Or do they? Let's get into it. First item up. I've had the Chicago Electric for 4 years before I gave it away. It was the 90 amp Flux core welder. I'll try to put a card up in the corner for you guys to check out. And though it didn't give off the most prettiest of welds, it still did the job and it did what I needed it to do. I used it as a mobile mechanic. I've used it in a quick situation where my leaf spring broke and I was able to weld it back. When my ball joint popped out unexpectedly, I was able to weld it and get me to and from where I needed to until I could put the parts in. So it was a phenomenal welder at the time until I stepped it up to the titanium MIG 170. That one's operated off of gas, or I can run flux core, my choice. I can run it off 110, I can run it off 220. That thing is a kick-ass welder for what it's worth. If you don't like my language, I apologize. Put your kids to sleep, come on back and watch the video. Jumping on to the next one, number 2, that you can find at Harbor Freight outside of the welders, you're going to want some PPE of some kind. What is PPE? Personal protective equipment. Could be these cheap safety glasses that you can find over in their $1 to $2 section, just past the welding supplies. We can get gloves. They sell Hardy gloves. Now granted, these are my Skeletor Matco gloves that I picked up, but I do have a pair of the Hardys at work, and they have been phenomenal so far, been rocking them for months. Other items that you might consider for PPE is going to be hearing protection. They got a nice selection of hearing protection. What they don't sell currently is welding jackets, okay? They do sell welding sleeves, so if you're a sleeve guy, you can get those. I haven't been over the top impressed with the Vulcan gloves, so you might not want those, but at some point you're going to want to get some welding gloves, okay? That's also part of your personal protective equipment. Another thing is going to be a hood, okay? Let's move on to that. You're going to need some kind of welding hood. If you're going to be welding, you need a welding hood. Now this one happens to be a Matco auto darkening, but when the batteries went bad, I got flash burn. Like the devil, right? Alright, any rate, I have had the Chicago Electric welding hood. Bought that for $45. Actually, it was a gift from my grandmother when I first started messing with welding. I've changed out the clear shield a couple times, but overall, it runs directly off of the flash of the weld. So I don't have to worry about charging it up with the sun. I don't have to worry about batteries. It still kicks butt to this day. 10-year welding hood. Tell me $45 wasn't well spent, okay? Phenomenal welding hood. I love them both. But when that one takes a crap, I jump back to my Chicago Electric. I just like this one a little bit better for the grinding feature. I can move it from grinding to welding, and it works out nice for me. It's a nice little upgrade. I heard the Vulcan welding hoods are actually quite nice. I haven't personally tried one out myself. Okay, let's get into some other things that you're going to run across that you're going to need that you might want from Harbor Freight. Going on to number 3, a grinder of some kind. Got the Hercules 11 amp, 11,000 RPM angle grinder. Okay, this thing's pretty badass. My dad's had one for a long time. He recommends it. One of the features I'm not sure I'm going to get used to yet, but it's still a work in progress, is the paddle feature. But you are able to lock it in place, and it's going to be one of those items that you're going to use a lot when it comes to welding, okay? Now we'll get into the number 4, consumables. And this is a good reason why we brought this up with the whole grinding situation. You're going to need sanding wheels, maybe some cutoff wheels. They don't even sell the Chicago Electric anymore. They have the Warrior now, okay? Warrior now sells the cutoff wheels, but you're going to want some cutoff wheels. Hercules sells the grinding discs. You might want a couple of grinding discs depending on how extensive you're planning on getting into your project. maybe a wire brush of some kind. You're going to need extra wire, so you're going to want to pick up a roll of wire. That happens to be 035, and that's made by Vulcan. Replacement tips in case you don't clean the slag off. Replacement welding tips. These are plasma tips, okay? Those are going to be some things that you're going to see on the shelf come first quarter. Another item that you're going to see here pretty soon, let's get into it real quick. What is the fifth one that you're going to need when it comes to welding? Let's have some common sense, shall we? Okay? You're going to want to weld in a well-ventilated area. You're going to want to make sure your animals are nowhere near where you're going to be welding so they don't get flash burned. Ergo, the same exact thing if you have children. Make sure they understand they are not to come out into the shop, or they are not to come out without the parent. So that way the parent can, check and see if you're still welding so they don't get flash burned. Use some common sense, okay? Have a fire extinguisher, have a fire blanket, have some way of being able to put out a fire or extinguish a fire should one take place. A new item that you're going to see right here on our soon-to-be welding bench is going to be the titanium plasma 45. Soon to hit shelves on the first quarter, sometime possibly in January or February. We are going to be utilizing this plasma cutter to cut through 1/8" steel plate to make the surface top for our welding station. Now, what is this thing capable of doing? It is capable of cutting through up to 5/8 cleanly, but it can cut up to 1 inch, okay? But look, if you don't want to burn through all these consumables like these cutoff wheels, you might consider picking up the titanium plasma cutter when it hits the shelf. We're going to try it out and get an overall opinion and idea of how this thing works, what are all the features and benefits, and just how well it cuts, especially from somebody that hasn't used a plasma cutter in some 20 years. So I'm very curious about this plasma cutter, alright? Alright, one more item that you're not going to find at Harbor Freight, or maybe you can, and you'll let me know down in the comments. I haven't personally looked. I stumbled across this Milwaukee abrasive chop saw at the Home Depot for about 250 bucks. My dad had given me a Hitachi that he had cleaned up and rebuilt, put a new wheel on, etc. The thing was great for a while it lasted. I was able to sell it for about 100 bucks or so. Came in, picked this bad boy up with what it was that I sold that one for, and stepped it up to the next level. I've been thoroughly impressed with the Milwaukee. Intermittent use, okay, between here and work, I've taken it back and forth, and it just keeps on cutting. Rock and roll. Another item that you might not like over at Harbor Freight, maybe you do, maybe you decide to use a different style of tape measure. Now I know Bowers sells a good tape measure, and they also have an auto locking feature, so you guys told me, but this Milwaukee auto locking tape measure is pretty sweet. However, it doesn't need to be auto locking. Just get any kind of tape measure, okay? But you're going to need to take some kind of measurement, and at some point you're going to need a marker. Now I prefer using a Sharpie, okay? Sharpies work out real well, they hold up well for me. I find that their ink in the Milwaukee Sharpies tend to last a little bit longer than the Sharpies that I can find at Walmart. For some reason these things dry out pretty quick. That's why I buy a whole box of them. Moving on to one of the other things that you're going to need that you can pick up from Harbor Freight is going to be some kind of file, because when you're working with square tubing, or you want to just take a quick burr off, and you don't need to use the grinder or sander for this, or you can't get into a certain area, use a file. Get in there, knock out some of that burr, knock out some of the slag, whatever you're going to do. Now another thing that you can use for slag, and I picked this up also from Harbor Freight, some kind of wire brush. Okay, this wire brush is awesome. Now I've bought wire brushes from Home Depot, I've bought wire brushes from Harbor Freight. It's a wire brush. You're going to be using it to clean off excess slag, etc. Another item that you might not see at Harbor Freight. Now I've tried the Vulcan welding gloves, okay? The welding slag does fall in between the finger and it burns through. It's not a good pair of welding gloves. I did a video a while back. I'll throw the card up here in the corner. Alright, so I picked these hot rods up from our good buddy Jeff from the Gear Wrench tool truck, but they're made by Steiner, okay? These are a phenomenal pair of welding gloves. So he says, we're going to put them to the test, break them in and try them out. Now I do have a pair of Lincoln welding gloves that are down there in the MiG 170 roll cart, which you can also get from Harbor Freight. So if you don't have some kind of welding station, or you're not planning on building a welding workbench, you might consider picking up one of their little welding carts. So you can set your flux core welder, plasma cutter, whatever on, okay? They're phenomenal to have. You don't necessarily have to buy a big old welding toolbox. You can make your own, okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and germs, bats and ghouls, children of all ages, we're getting ready to get out of here. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If I missed something when it comes to welding that you would recommend, I urge you to put it down in the comments. Share with me what items that you love from Harbor Freight. Share with me what items that you wish that you would have gotten from somewhere else and why. That's all I got for this video. Cheers and deuces.